The morning air bit at Taiwan's face as he trudged through the misty forest of Nexus 7. 6 months into his 2-year survey mission, and the days had begun to blur together. Wake up, check equipment, map terrain, collect samples, return to station, repeat. Today was different, though he didn't know it yet. Taiwan adjusted the weight of his pack and checked his mapping device. The Terran Expansion Coalition wanted detailed reports on every valley, hill, and river of this supposedly empty world. His job was simple: mark what could be mined, what could be farmed, and what could be built upon. 2 more kilometers to the next survey point. He muttered to himself, his breath forming small clouds in the cool air. The planet's twin suns were just breaking through the morning fog, casting strange jewel shadows across the purple-leafed trees. It was beautiful, in a lonely sort of way. Taiwan had volunteered for this solo mission after the painful end of his marriage. 3 years of working in space, he had thought, would be enough time to forget her. It wasn't. His boots crunched on fallen leaves as he entered a small clearing. Something caught his eye. A disturbance in the undergrowth about 50 meters ahead. Normally, he would have logged it as animal activity, but the pattern looked wrong. Too straight, too deliberate. Taiwan drew his standard-issue sidearm. Not that he had ever needed to use it. The planet's wildlife was mostly harmless, but survey protocol demanded caution when investigating anomalies. "Hello," he called, immediately feeling foolish. The planet was uninhabited by intelligent life. That was the whole point of the survey mission. Virgin territory, ripe for human expansion. Following the disturbed vegetation, Taiwan found himself at the edge of a small ravine. Recent soil displacement suggested something had tumbled down the slope. He peered over the edge, expecting to see a fallen tree or perhaps one of the deer-like creatures that roamed these forests. What he saw instead made him drop his mapping tool. At the bottom of the ravine lay a humanoid figure, unmoving. Even from this distance, Taiwan could tell it wasn't human. The skin caught the sunlight with an iridescent blue-purple sheen that no human could possess. "This is impossible," he whispered. Survey records were explicit. Nexus 7 had been thoroughly scanned before his mission. No intelligent species, no settlements, nothing but flora and non-sentient fauna. Yet there she was. Taiwan could see now that the figure appeared female, though alien in form, lying motionless among the fallen leaves. He scrambled down the slope, half sliding on the loose soil. As he approached, he saw that she was completely naked, her body marked with what looked like deliberate wounds. Some were fresh, others partially healed. Her face was delicate, with features that seemed almost human, yet not quite. Higher cheekbones, no eyebrows, and what appeared to be small, luminescent markings along her temples. Taiwan knelt beside her and checked for signs of life, relieved to find a pulse, rapid and light, but present. Her skin was cool to the touch, but not cold. He noticed subtle differences in her anatomy. 6 fingers on each hand, joints that bent slightly differently from human ones, and a strange pattern of light that seemed to pulse beneath her skin with each heartbeat. He shrugged off his jacket and covered her, then pulled out his medical scanner. The device beeped in confusion, unable to match her biology to any known species in its database. "This changes everything," Taiwan said. His mind raced through the implications. An undocumented sentient species on a planet marked for colonization violated every treaty in the Coalition's books. It would halt development, trigger investigations, possibly even cost him his job if they decided he had falsified initial reports. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was that this being needed help. As gently as he could, Taiwan lifted her. She was surprisingly light, as if her bones were hollow. Her head lolled against his chest as he began the difficult climb back up the ravine. "I've got you," he said, though he knew she couldn't understand him. "You're going to be okay." The walk back to his survey station took twice as long, burdened as he was. Every few minutes, he checked to make sure she was still breathing. Once, her eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes with no whites, just large irises of deep violet with vertical pupils like a cat's. Taiwan's survey station was a prefabricated structure designed for one person. A main room with monitoring equipment, a small bedroom, a bathroom, and a storage area. Not exactly built for guests, especially not alien ones. He placed her carefully on his bed and ran a more thorough scan. The results were fascinating and troubling. Her body temperature was naturally lower than a human's. Her blood carried something similar to hemoglobin, but with a different molecular structure. Most concerning were the wounds, precise cuts and burns that couldn't have been accidental. Someone had hurt her deliberately. While the medical unit worked to clean and treat her injuries, Taiwan faced his next problem, the daily report. Every evening, his station automatically transmitted data back to Coalition headquarters. If he reported finding an alien, a team would be here within days. That should have been the right thing to do. It was certainly the legal thing. But something held him back. The precision of those wounds. The fact that no aliens had been detected in initial scans. It didn't add up, and until it did, his instinct was to protect her. For the first time in his 15 years of service, Taiwan falsified a report. He marked the day's findings as routine, mentioned some interesting but non-sentient wildlife, and sent it off. Then he disabled the station's internal cameras. What headquarters didn't know wouldn't hurt them, at least not yet. Hours passed. Taiwan dozed in his chair, waking at every small sound. Near what would have been midnight on Earth, a crash jolted him fully awake. She was conscious, backed into a corner of the room. A broken cup lay on the floor where she had knocked it off a shelf. Her eyes were wide with fear, and her body trembled. Taiwan raised his hand slowly, palms out. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." She made a sound, high-pitched and musical, like nothing he had ever heard. Her hands moved in what might have been a language of gestures. "I don't understand," Taiwan said. He tapped his chest. "Taiwan." He repeated the gesture and his name. The alien watched him warily. After a long moment, she placed a 6-fingered hand on her own chest and made a sound like bells in the wind. Taiwan tried to repeat it and failed completely. The sound was beyond his vocal range. "I need to call you something," he said. He thought for a moment, then smiled. "Jia, my imaginary friend when I was a child. Until we figure out your real name." She tilted her head, observing him with those strange violet eyes. Taiwan moved slowly to a storage locker and pulled out a spare set of clothes. They would be too big, but better than nothing. He held them out to her. After a moment's hesitation, Jia took the clothes. She examined them with obvious confusion, then looked at Taiwan as if for instruction. It took some awkward pantomiming, but eventually she understood and dressed herself in his oversized shirt and pants. The relief in her eyes was unmistakable. A universal emotion, it seemed. Taiwan activated his translation program, designed for first contact situations though rarely used in practical field work. He spoke slowly and clearly, letting the program record and analyze his speech patterns. "I found you injured in the forest. You're safe here. I want to help you." The program would need time and more language samples to build even a rudimentary translation matrix. For now, all he could do was try to convey safety through actions rather than words. He prepared a simple meal and offered it to her. Jia sniffed it cautiously, then took a small bite. Her face registered surprise, then what appeared to be pleasure. She ate hungrily after that. As she ate, Taiwan noticed the strange markings on her skin seemed to glow more brightly. They formed patterns along her arms and neck, pulsing slightly with what he guessed might be her emotional state. Who was she? How had she come to be alone and injured on a planet supposedly devoid of intelligent life? And most troubling, who had hurt her? Taiwan knew one thing for certain. His simple survey mission had just become infinitely more complicated. Tomorrow, he would try to communicate more effectively. Tonight, It was enough that she was safe, fed, and no longer alone. Neither of them was alone anymore. 2 weeks passed since Taiwan found Jia in the forest. Each day brought small but important steps forward. The translation program worked better than Taiwan had expected. Jia learned human words quickly, much faster than the program creators had thought possible for first contact situations. Her mind seemed to absorb language like a sponge soaking up water. "Sun," Taiwan said, pointing out the window at the twin stars rising over the horizon. "Sun," Jia repeated, her musical voice giving the word a strange, beautiful quality. "2 suns, not like my home. My home had 1 sun. Blue sun." Her grammar was still simple, but her vocabulary grew by the hour. The luminescent markings on her skin glowed brighter when she mastered a new word or concept. Taiwan wondered if they somehow connected to her brain function. They sat at the small table in the main room of the survey station. Taiwan had given Jia his spare clothes, which hung loosely on her smaller frame. She had tied knots in the fabric to make it fit better. "Jia," Taiwan said carefully, "can you tell me what happened to you? How did you get hurt?" The glow of her markings dimmed. She looked down at her 6-fingered hands. "Bad ones came," she said slowly. "Vek. Tall ones with gray skin. 4 eyes." She held up 4 fingers to emphasize the point. Taiwan frowned. The Vek Imperium was a known species, one of the first alien civilizations humans had made contact with 50 years ago. They were traders and diplomats who had sold the rights to several frontier worlds to the Terran Expansion Coalition, including Nexus 7. "The Vek hurt you?" he asked, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. Jia nodded. "Hurt everyone. My people lived here many, many years, in the big caves under mountains." She made a sweeping gesture with her arms. "Big cities and caves, safe places." This couldn't be right. The survey records were clear, no intelligent life on Nexus 7. Yet Jia was obviously intelligent, and she spoke of entire cities. "The Vek said this planet was empty," Taiwan said. "No people. That's why humans came here." Jaya's violet eyes widened. "Vek lie. They always lie." Her markings flashed with bright pulses. "They find my people long ago. Say they want trade, but they want what is underground. Special rocks. Magic rocks. Minerals." Taiwan suggested. "Resources." "Yes. Things that glow and power big machines." She made a rumbling sound and mimicked an explosion. "My people say no. These things keep planet alive. Keep balance." Vek angry. The pieces started to fit together in Taiwan's mind, forming a picture he didn't want to see. The Vek had discovered Jaya's species, been denied access to valuable resources, and then, what? Eliminated them, and sold the planet to humans afterward. "Jaya, where are the rest of your people now?" he asked, dreading the answer. Her markings dimmed to an almost gray color. "Gone. Most gone." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Vek attack came when human ships first seen in sky. Big attack. Poison gas in cave cities. Those who run, hunted." Taiwan felt sick. The Vek had committed genocide and covered it up, timing it with human arrival so any evidence would be attributed to natural causes or preparation for human settlement. "I was on last ship," Jaya continued, "with family group, trying to reach secret place, old temple in far mountains." She pointed north. "Ship hit by Vek weapons. Crashed. I only one wake up after crash." Taiwan reached across the table and gently took her hand. Her skin felt cool against his. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know. None of us knew." Jaya looked at him with those strange violet eyes. "You different from Vek. You help. You kind." The computer terminal on the wall beeped, startling them both. It was the daily notification from headquarters. Taiwan went to check it, his mind still processing Jaya's story. The message made his blood run cold. "Reminder to all survey personnel. VEC diplomatic delegation arriving at Outpost Alpha in 3 days for routine treaty discussions. All survey stations to prepare updated resource reports. Taiwan turned to Jia, who was watching him with concern. "What wrong?" she asked. "The VEC are coming," he said. "Not here, but to the main human base on this planet. It's about 500 kilometers from here." Jaya's markings flashed in what Taiwan now recognized as fear. "They find me. They kill me," she said simply. "Last of my line. I carry memories." Memories. Jaya touched her forehead. "My people. We pass down memories. From parent to child. I carry my mother, my grandmother, many before. History of my people here." She tapped her chest. "In me." Taiwan sat down heavily. This wasn't just about saving one alien refugee. Jaya might be the last living record of an entire civilization that the VEC had tried to wipe from existence. "We need to record your story," he said. "Everything you remember, everything your ancestors knew. The truth needs to be told." Jaya shook her head frantically. "No time. VEC have machines. They sense my people. From far away. If they come to human base, they might feel me here." "Feel you?" "Like some kind of detection technology. My people connect to planet. Special way. VEC made machines to find this connection." She looked around fearfully. "Not safe here now." Taiwan paced the small room. He had options, none of them good. He could report his discovery to headquarters. But would they believe him? Would they protect Jia against their VEC trading partners based on her word alone? Or would they hand her over in the name of diplomatic relations? He could try to hide her somewhere else on the planet, but where? His knowledge was limited to the areas he had surveyed. Or they could run. He could abandon his post, steal a transport, try to get off-world. That would make him a deserter and a thief, ending his career and possibly landing him in prison. "We need proof," he finally said. "Something more than just your word against the VEC." Jaya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I show you." She stood and moved to the center of the room. Her markings began to glow more intensely. "My people connect to life, to plants, waters, stone. We heal planet when it hurts." She held out her hands. "I show you truth, but it, personal, deep." Taiwan didn't fully understand, but he nodded. "Show me." Jaya reached out and placed her 6-fingered hands on either side of his face. Her touch was gentle, her skin cool against his temples. "Look," she whispered. Suddenly, Taiwan wasn't in his survey station anymore. He was standing in an enormous cavern, its ceiling hundreds of meters high. Crystal formations cast rainbow light across a city of graceful buildings. People like Jaya moved through the streets, their markings glowing in patterns that seemed to communicate without words. He felt their joy, their connection to each other and to the planet itself. He saw them nurturing strange plants that cleaned the air, purified water, and sustained the delicate balance of the underground ecosystem. Then the vision changed. VEC ships appeared in the skies outside. Tall, 4-eyed figures in environmental suits walking through the cavern cities, examining mineral deposits with cold calculation. Negotiations, refusals, threats, and finally, horror, gas pouring through ventilation systems. Jaya's people falling, their markings going dark. The survivors fleeing deeper, always deeper into the planet's embrace. The last vision was of Jaya's family. 12 individuals of varying ages, boarding a small ship as explosions rocked their final sanctuary. Their desperate flight. The crash. Jaya removed her hands from Taiwan's face. He gasped, tears streaming down his cheeks. "That was real," he said. "It wasn't a question." The emotional imprint was too powerful, too raw to be fabricated. "My memories, my mother's memories. Truth." Jaya's own eyes shimmered with moisture. "Now you understand." Taiwan stood, his decision made. He went to the computer terminal and began typing rapidly. "What you do?" Jaya asked. Sending a message to someone I trust. My old commander, Sujin. She works in human-alien relations now. If anyone will help us without immediately reporting to the chain of command, it's her. Can trust. Taiwan paused, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Could he trust anyone with this? A wrong move would mean Jaya's death and the final erasure of her people's existence. Yes, he said finally. Sujin has a strong sense of right and wrong. Once she knows the truth, she'll help us. He finished the message, careful to include just enough information to intrigue Sujin without alerting anyone monitoring communications. A personal request. An urgent matter. A reference to an old mission they'd served on together where they'd faced a moral dilemma. Now we wait, he said, sending the message. And we prepare. We might need to leave quickly. Jaya nodded, her markings pulsing with what Taiwan now recognized as determination. I trust you, she said simply. You found me with nothing. You gave me hope. 3 days passed with no reply from Sujin. Taiwan checked his communications console every hour, hoping for some sign that his message had reached her. Nothing came. Maybe bad, Jaya said as they ate a simple breakfast. Her language skills improved daily, though she still spoke in short sentences. Maybe friend not come. Taiwan pushed his food around his plate. Sujin will come. She has to get permission to travel to a survey station. It takes time. But doubt gnawed at him. What if his message had been flagged? What if the Vex somehow monitored human communications? Jaya sensed his worry. The markings on her skin dimmed to a soft blue. You afraid? She said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Taiwan admitted. I'm afraid for you. If the Vex find out you survived, they'll do anything to silence you. Jaya nodded. I know. She placed her 6-fingered hand on his. But now you know too. You saw my memories. Truth lives in 2 minds now. That was small comfort. If they were both killed, the truth would die with them. Taiwan had spent the past days gathering supplies. Food, water, medical kits, portable shelter. If they needed to run, they would be ready. He'd also downloaded all the survey data he had collected. It might contain evidence of Jaya's people if he knew where to look. The perimeter alarm beeped, making them both jump. Someone's approaching, Taiwan said, moving quickly to the monitoring station. The screen showed a small transport vehicle coming through the forest toward the station. It bore Terran Expansion Coalition markings. Hide, he told Jaya, pointing to the storage room. Stay quiet until I know who it is. Jaya nodded and slipped into the small room, pulling the door closed behind her. Taiwan straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. He opened the station door just as the transport came to a stop outside. A tall woman with short gray hair stepped out. Commander Han Sujin. Her face was lined with age and experience, but her eyes were as sharp as Taiwan remembered. Relief washed over him. Commander, thank you for coming. Sujin frowned. Your message said it was urgent. I haven't been your commander for 5 years, Taiwan. What's so important that I had to manufacture an inspection excuse to get out here? Before Taiwan could answer, a second figure emerged from the transport. A younger man with a hard face and the insignia of corporate security on his uniform. This is Min-ho, Sujin said. Coalition security. He insisted on accompanying me. Taiwan's heart sank. Coalition security meant corporate interests, the mining companies that funded the surveys. We should talk inside, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. As they entered the station, Min-ho's eyes scanned every corner. Small place, he commented. Must be lonely out here. I manage, Taiwan replied, his mind racing. Jaya was hidden just meters away. If Min-ho searched the station, your message mentioned a discovery, Sujin said, getting straight to the point. Something that couldn't be put in an official report. Taiwan looked at Min-ho. I need to speak with Commander Han alone. Min-ho crossed his arms. I have clearance for all survey operations. If there's a problem, I should hear it. It's a personal matter. Todd 1 tried. You dragged the commander out to the middle of nowhere for a personal chat. Minho's voice was skeptical. Try again. Su Jin studied Ta Wan's face. Whatever it is, you can say it in front of Minho. He's trustworthy. Ta Wan doubted that, but he was running out of options. Each minute increased the risk that Jaya would make a noise or that Minho would insist on searching the station. I found something, he began carefully. Something that changes everything we know about Nexus 7. Minho rolled his eyes. Let me guess. Some mineral deposit you want to claim a finder's bonus on. That's against regulations. Not minerals, Taiwan said. Life, intelligent life. The room went silent. Su Jin's eyes widened. Minho's face hardened. That's impossible, Minho said flatly. The planet was thoroughly scanned before survey missions began. No intelligent species. You're wasting our time. I can prove it, Todd 1 said. He moved toward the storage room door. Minho stepped in front of him, hand moving to the weapon at his hip. Hold it. What's in there? The proof, Todd 1 said. He looked at Su Jin. Please, just look. Then decide. Su Jin nodded slowly. Let him open the door, Minho. Minho stepped aside, but kept his hand near his weapon. Taiwan opened the storage room door. Jia, he called softly. It's okay. You can come out. Nothing happened. Jaya, he peered into the storage room. Empty. Somehow she had slipped out without any of them noticing. There's nothing there, Minho said, pushing past Taiwan to look for himself. This is ridiculous. Su Jin's expression showed disappointment. Taiwan, what is this about? You've never been one for jokes or games. She was here, Taiwan insisted. She must have escaped when she heard strange voices. She's afraid. She? Su Jin asked. A survivor, the last of her kind. Her people lived on this planet for thousands of years before the Vec wiped them out and sold the world to us. Minho laughed harshly. The Vec are our trading partners. They've been nothing but helpful in our expansion efforts. They're liars, Taiwan said. They committed genocide to get their hands on this planet's resources. Jia showed me her memories. Her entire civilization was in the cave systems underground. Memories? Minho turned to Su Jin. Commander, this man has clearly been alone too long. He's hallucinating. Su Jin looked troubled. Taiwan, this is a serious accusation. Without evidence. A crash from outside interrupted her. All three rushed to the window. 2 Vec warriors stood beside what looked like a small scout ship. They were tall, gray-skinned beings with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their faces. They wore light armor and carried energy weapons. What are they doing here? Minho demanded. The diplomatic delegation isn't due at this sector for weeks. They're tracking her, Taiwan said grimly. Jaya said they have technology that can detect her people's connection to the planet. The Vec warriors were scanning the area with handheld devices. One pointed toward the forest behind the station. They found her trail, Taiwan said. He grabbed his emergency pack and headed for the door. Minho moved to block him. You're not going anywhere. This is now a security matter. They'll kill her, Taiwan said desperately. She's the last survivor, the only witness to what they did. Step back, Minho ordered, drawing his weapon. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. The station door burst open. The Vec warriors stood there, their 4 eyes fixing on the humans. We detect anomalous life signs in this area, one said in the mechanical voice of a translation device. You will surrender the specimen immediately. Specimen, Su Jin repeated, looking confused. There is no specimen here, Minho said, lowering his weapon slightly. Just 3 humans conducting survey operations. The Vec warrior's upper eyes narrowed. Our sensors indicate the presence of a Larian within the last hour. Harboring this creature violates our treaty. Larian. Su-Jin looked at Taiwan. Is that what you called Jada? Taiwan nodded slowly, watching the Vec warriors carefully. That's her people's name. The people you murdered, he added, addressing the Vec directly. The lead Vec stepped forward. The Larian species was hostile to development. Their removal was necessary for the progress of both our civilizations. The cold, matter-of-fact way he described genocide chilled Taiwan to the bone. Minho looked shocked. You eliminated an entire species. A primitive, obstructionist species, the Vec replied. Now we will complete our task. The female's biosignature leads into the forest. We will find her. The Vec turned to leave, clearly considering the conversation finished. Wait, Su-Jin called. The authority in her voice made even the Vec pause. What treaty are you referring to? I've reviewed all agreements between our species. There's nothing about eliminating native life forms. Certain appendices are classified. The Vec responded. Your corporate leadership was informed of the necessity. They agreed that the resources of this world outweighed the value of its primitive inhabitants. Minho's face paled. That's not possible. The coalition would never sanction. Your mining corporations sanctioned everything, the second Vec said. Do not pretend moral superiority now. They turned again to leave. Taiwan tensed, ready to follow them into the forest. A blinding flash of blue light suddenly filled the room. The Vec warriors cried out, their sensors overloading. When the light faded, Jaya stood in the center of the room, her markings glowing so brightly they were almost white. Murderers, she said, her voice stronger and clearer than Taiwan had ever heard it. You will not finish what you started. She reached out her hands, and the impossible happened. The plants outside the station windows began to grow at an accelerated rate, vines and roots breaking through the ground and wrapping around the Vec ship. The Vec warriors raised their weapons, but Jaya moved faster than seemed possible. She touched each of them lightly on their armored chests. Both Vec froze, their four eyes widening in what looked like terror. See the truth, Jaya said. Feel what you have done. The Vec dropped to their knees, making high-pitched keening sounds that their translation devices couldn't process. Jaya turned to Su-Jin and Minho, who stood shocked and speechless. Now you decide, she said. Help the killers, or help the truth. The room was silent except for the pain sounds coming from the Vec warriors. They remained on their knees, all four eyes wide with horror, as Jaya forced them to experience the memories of their people's crimes. Minho was the first to recover from shock. He raised his weapon, pointing it not at Jaya, but at the Vec. Is it true? He demanded. Did your people really wipe out an entire civilization just for mining rights? The Vec could not answer, lost in the nightmare of memories Jaya had thrust upon them. Su-Jin stepped forward, her face grim. Jaya, she said softly, please stop. We need them able to speak. Jaya looked at her, violet eyes glowing with an inner light. Slowly, she removed her hands from the Vec warriors. They slumped to the floor, trembling. They have seen truth, Jaya said. Memory cannot lie. Taiwan moved to Jaya's side, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. What happens now? He asked Su-Jin. The older woman's face showed the weight of a difficult decision. We need to report this. All of it. The Vec deception, the genocide, and the corporate cover-up. She turned to Minho. Your bosses knew about this. Minho shook his head, his face pale. I can't believe it. The highest levels must have been involved, but most of us, we had no idea. He looked at Jaya with wonder and horror. An entire civilization. Gone. Not gone, Jaya said firmly. I remain. Memory remains. One of the Vec warriors lifted his head. It doesn't matter what you do, he said, voice raspy through the translator. Your human leaders will deny everything. The treaty is too valuable. Your corporations have invested too much. Minho's grip tightened on his weapon. "You don't know humans very well," he said coldly. Su-Jin activated her communication device. "This is Commander Han. I need an emergency channel to Coalition headquarters, highest priority." The device beeped a negative response. "Communications are being jammed," Su-Jin said, looking at the Vec warriors. "More Vec come," Jaya said, her markings pulsing with alarm. "Big ship, in sky now." Taiwan checked the station's sensors. "She's right. A Vec cruiser just entered orbit. They must have been waiting nearby." "We're out of time," Su-Jin said. "We need to get Jaya to the abandoned research station in Sector 7. It has powerful transmitters that might break through the jamming." "You helped build that station," Taiwan said, suddenly remembering. "Before you were my commander." Su-Jin nodded. "It was my first assignment on this planet, before survey teams were sent out. The station has equipment that can broadcast on emergency frequencies to every human settlement in this system." "I'll get the transport ready," Minho said, heading for the door. "Wait," Jaya called. She pointed to the Vec warriors. "What about them?" Minho looked at the aliens with cold eyes. "We can't take them with us, and we can't let them mourn their ship." "No killing," Jaya said firmly. "No more death." Taiwan admired her compassion, even after everything the Vec had done to her people. "We could lock them in the storage room," he suggested. "They'll break out eventually," Su-Jin said. Jaya approached the Vec again. They shrank back in fear. "I not hurt you," she said, "but you sleep now." She pressed her 6-fingered hands to their heads. The Vec warriors' eyes closed, and they slumped to the floor, unconscious. "They sleep until sun rises tomorrow," Jaya explained. "That should give us enough time," Su-Jin said, looking impressed. "Let's move." They piled into the transport, Minho driving, while Su-Jin checked her weapons. Taiwan sat in the back with Jaya, who stared out the window as they sped through the forest. "What will happen when we reach the research station?" Taiwan asked Su-Jin. "If we can broadcast what we know, what Jaya has shown us, it will cause an uproar throughout the coalition. The Vec Treaty will collapse. There will be investigations, tribunals. And Jaya, what will happen to her?" Su-Jin's face softened. "She'll be protected. She's the last of her kind, a witness to crimes against an entire species. No one will harm her." Taiwan wasn't so sure. Powerful people had covered up the Larian genocide once. They might try again. Jaya suddenly gripped Taiwan's arm. "Feel it?" she asked. "Feel what?" "The planet. It wakes up." Her markings began to pulse with a steady rhythm. The transport rocked as the ground trembled. Not violently, but enough to notice. "What's happening?" Minho asked, slowing the vehicle. Jaya closed her eyes. "Old places, deep places. They wake up because I call." "What do you mean?" Taiwan asked. Instead of answering, Jaya pointed ahead. "Stop here." Minho looked at Su-Jin, who nodded. The transport came to a halt in a small clearing. Jaya stepped out and placed her hands on the ground. Her markings glowed brighter than ever, pulsing in complex patterns. The earth beneath her fingers began to split open, revealing a hidden entrance to what looked like an ancient tunnel. "Hidden way," Jaya explained. "Safer than surface. Vec not find us here." "An underground passage." Su-Jin looked amazed. "How did you know it was here?" "All Larian know ways between sacred places," Jaya said. "Memory tells me." They left the transport hidden among dense vegetation and followed Jaya into the tunnel. The walls were smooth, clearly artificial, and marked with the same kinds of luminescent patterns that adorn Jada's skin. As they walked deeper, the patterns began to glow, responding to Jaya's presence. "Your people built this?" Taiwan asked, running his hand along the glowing walls. Jaya nodded. "Long ago, to connect all sacred places." The tunnel sloped downward for nearly an hour before opening into a vast cavern. Taiwan gasped at what he saw. A huge underground lake spread before them, its waters glowing with bioluminescent life. At its center stood an island with graceful structures that looked both ancient and somehow timeless. "Is that?" he began. "City?" Jaya finished for him. "No, temple. Heart place." She looked sad. "Last heart place not destroyed." Su-Jin checked her map display. "The research station should be almost directly above us. There must be a way up." Jaya led them around the edge of the lake. Small creatures that looked like a cross between fish and birds skimmed the glowing water surface. Plants unlike any Tadwan had seen grew along the banks, their fronds reaching toward Jaya as she passed. "The ecosystem down here," Minho said in wonder. "It's completely unique, independent of the surface." "Not independent," Jaya corrected. "Connected. Different parts of same body." They reached a series of platforms built into the cavern wall. Jia placed her hand on a panel, and the platforms began to glow. "This will take us up," she said. The ride to the surface was smooth and swift. When they emerged, they found themselves inside the abandoned research station. Dust covered everything, but the place seemed intact. Su-Jin moved quickly to the main control panel. The power systems should still work. They were designed to last for decades without maintenance. She pressed several buttons, and lights flickered on throughout the facility. "The broadcast equipment is this way," she said, leading them down a corridor. Minho kept watch at the entrance while Su-Jin worked to activate the communications array. Jia stood quietly beside Tadwan, her markings pulsing with what he now recognized as nervous energy. "What will happen to your people's home?" Tadwan asked her gently. "This beautiful world. If truth known, maybe humans protected," Jaya said. "Better than Vec. Humans can learn." Her faith in humanity touched him deeply, especially after what her people had suffered. "It's ready," Su-Jin called. "The system will broadcast to every coalition outpost and settlement in the sector." "Jia, are you prepared to share your memories again? To show everyone what happened?" Jaya nodded solemnly. "For my people. For truth." Su-Jin activated the recording equipment. "This is Commander Han Su-Jin, identification code Alpha 7 Delta 92. What follows is testimony of crimes against sentient life committed on Nexus 7. The witness is the last survivor of the indigenous species, Valerian." Jaya stepped forward and placed her hands on the specialized sensors Su-Jin had prepared. "Show them," Su-Jin said softly. The memories flowed into the system. Beautiful underground cities filled with light and life, the arrival of the Vec, the negotiations, the betrayal, and finally the systematic destruction of an entire civilization. The images were clear, undeniable. When it was done, Jaya stepped back. Her markings had dimmed to a pale blue, exhaustion evident on her face. "Broadcast complete," Su-Jin said. "It's been received by 27 human settlements." Minho rushed into the room. "We've got company. Vec ships landing outside." Taiwan moved to Jaya's side protectively. "Now what?" The ground began to tremble again, more strongly this time. "Not Vec," Jaya said, her voice suddenly stronger. "Temple awakens." The trembling increased. From somewhere deep below came a humming sound that seemed to resonate through their bodies. "What's happening?" Minho asked, steadying himself against a wall. Jaya smiled. For the first time since Taiwan had found her, she looked truly hopeful. "Not last," she said. "Never last. Others wait. In sleep chambers. Deep below. Temple calls them now. They wake up. There are more survivors." Taiwan asked, his heart leaping. Jaya nodded. "Guardians. Put to sleep when last attack came. Temple protects them until time right." She looked at the three humans. "Time right now. Because of you." Outside, Vec warriors approached the station, weapons drawn. But before they could reach the entrance, the ground split open. Glowing plants burst forth, growing at impossible speeds, wrapping around the Vec and their ships. From the newly formed crevices, figures emerged, more of Jaya's people, their markings glowing brightly as they awoke from their long sleep. "My people live," Jaya said, taking Taiwan's hand. "Not just memory now. Real life. Real hope." Taiwan squeezed her hand gently. "It all started because you survived. Because you had nothing but kept going anyway." Jaya's markings pulsed with a warm, golden light. "Not nothing," she corrected. "Had truth. Had story." She looked into his eyes. "Then had you."